Darling? I asked. Are you sleeping? Amy shook her head and muttered something unintelligible. May I ask you a question? Hmm. I took this as an agreement. Can you tell me, after almost 25 years of marriage, why your skills in fondling my manhood have suddenly improved? Still half asleep, Amy grumbled. I always did this for you. I watched Amy. She was relaxed and curled up with her back turned to me. She hugged her extra pillow. Yes, you did. You did it as foreplay, but you never really enjoyed it. Why such a sudden change? Amy rolled over, still clutching her pillow tightly. She flashed her sexy blue eyes at me, smiled widely, and said in a flirtatious voice, I didn't hear you complaining. I smiled back at Amy, my best friend, and the woman I had adored since we met at a summer backyard party over 2 decades ago. And now I'm not complaining. I'm just wondering why your behavior on this matter has changed. Amy woke up and asked, What's your problem, Chris? I'm just asking a simple question, Amy. For 25 years, you did this without much enthusiasm. It was routine work at best. Amy sat up on the bed, and I continued, And tonight you did something you've never done before. I'm just wondering where this sudden enthusiasm comes from. Amy climbed out of bed and stood with her hands on her hips and stared at me. We can go back to the old way, if that's what you prefer. Amy was angry, and I suspected she would be even angrier. No, I like your new skills. I wanted to get into it, so I continued. You're almost as good as some of my old college girlfriends. Amy's face turned red with anger, but before she could comment, I said, But you still haven't answered my question. Why have your skills improved? Have you read an article, or had intimate conversations with your girlfriends, or perhaps had some practical training? What the hell are you accusing me of? Amy was furious. I calmly told her, I didn't accuse you of anything. I'm just looking for an explanation. You hated doing this throughout our entire relationship, and suddenly, it gives you pleasure. I'm wondering why. Amy grabbed her pillow, headed for the door, and as she walked out of the bedroom, she angrily shouted, You don't have to rack your pathetic brain over this anymore, because I'm never doing this again. Amy was halfway down the hallway, heading toward our guest room, when I said from our open bedroom door, I guess it won't matter if you tell me the truth tonight. I'll find out tomorrow. What the hell is that supposed to mean? This means, I told her slowly, that the private investigator I hired almost 6 weeks ago has completed his report. I'm meeting him in the morning. I suspect your new and improved skills will feature prominently in the report. As I closed and locked the bedroom door, I saw Amy's jaw drop. Amy's knocking, sobbing, and pleading continued for over an hour as I lay in our double bed crying into my pillow. Amy and I get up early. Since I didn't want to talk to her, I set the alarm for 3 in the morning. I got dressed in sports clothes and left the house within 5 minutes. My workout that morning lasted 2 hours, and I was exhausted. I took a shower and got dressed in the clothes that I had put in my car the day before. I settled into a table at my favorite breakfast place just before 6. I was 2 blocks from my office. After I ordered my coffee, I turned on my phone and was immediately bombarded with text messages and voicemail notifications from my slut wife. I ignored the messages and texted my boss, Can you meet me at Lucy's before work? Do not rush. 30 minutes later, I received, Of course, at 7:30, Stacy flew into Lucy's, looked around, and, noticing me, plopped down on the bench opposite. She ordered coffee and a bagel to go, and then looked at me. Stacy's eyes widened, and she said, You look like crap. Yes, I look like crap and feel even worse. Is there any shit at work that I need to know about? I shook my head and felt Stacy relax before she even finished her question. No, it's personal. I'm convinced Amy is cheating on me. She almost confirmed it last night. This morning I'm meeting with the private investigator I hired. His report is ready, and I will find out all the unpleasant details. I just want to warn you that I will be sneaking in and out of the office while I sort out this mess. Stacy sat silently and collected her thoughts. Finally, she asked, How can I help? If you don't have a wand, I'm not sure you can do much. I will take the next 2 days off, but will remain in constant contact with the office. This will help me get through until the weekend. I'm going to stay away from Amy for a while. I'm meeting with my private investigator this morning and my lawyer tomorrow morning. In conclusion, I shrugged my shoulders. Don't you think you're getting ahead of yourself? Unless you're not telling me something, have you seen any evidence? Last night, I provoked an argument about sex. Amy quickly became heated and ran out of the bedroom. I told her she didn't need to answer my questions. My private investigator would answer them in the morning. If you had seen the look on Amy's face, you would have been 100% sure of what the report would say. You need to talk to her, Chris. I know. I will do so, but not now. Where did you stop? Asked Stacy. I'll rent a room. Stacy began rummaging through her suitcase-sized purse and finally pulled out a set of keys. Taking the key off the ring, she said, "Here is the key to our cottage. You were there. It's only 35 minutes away. We won't be using it until the end of the month." Handing me the key, she asked, "Can I give you some advice?" "Certainly. If everything goes as you expect, your life will get worse before it gets better. Life will be crap for a while, and then one day you'll wake up and not feel like crap at all. You'll just be miserable. This will be the start of your recovery." You seem to be speaking from experience. My ex divorced me 12 years ago. It was cruel. We took a sip of coffee, and Stacy continued. I don't talk about it much, mainly because I'm embarrassed. I ruined my life, my child's life, and Tom's life. His family despises me. My son's friends hit on me because they know I'm a slut. I interjected, "You don't have to tell me things like that, Stacy. I know. Even after 2 years of weekly therapy sessions, I still have more questions about my idiotic behavior than answers." Each of us smiled sadly. Stacy continued, "Tom found out about my infidelity in the worst possible way. He tested positive for sexually transmitted diseases. I infected my husband and best friend. I was at a loss for words, so she continued, "It's only getting worse, if that's even possible." I panicked and blamed Tom, saying that he was the one who infected me. We both knew, hell, everyone knew I was a cheater. "Why did you do that?" Stacy stared at the tabletop and admitted, "Because I could. Because I wanted to feel sexy again. Because I wanted to have a nasty secret. Because I liked illegal, anonymous, rough sex." She explained, "I travel on business just like you. Once or twice a year, I met an interesting man and invited him to my room. Looking back, it seems so stupid." The silence continued until Stacy asked, "Have you ever cheated?" "No. To be honest, I have never given in to temptation. Do not get me wrong, I am not an angel. I like to flirt and I like to know that women find me attractive, but I never thought about betraying Amy." "Why do you think this is so?" "It's just how I'm built. Sex with Amy was pretty vanilla. She doesn't like to experiment. But a regular date with Amy is always better than the kinkiest one-night stand in college." "What made you suspicious?" "Amy and I have always had an active sex life. Even after 25 years, we still get naked 2 or 3 times a week. Over the past few months, Amy has become a little more aggressive, a little more adventurous, a little more—" I shrugged again. A couple of months later, with a growing lump in my stomach, I hired a private detective. I'll know the results in a couple of hours. I bet Amy will call the office looking for you. What should we tell her? Tell her that I'm taking a short vacation and won't be back at the office until next week. Stacy paid our bill along with her bagel. She leaned over, hugged me tightly, and said, "Hold on. Let me know if there is anything I can do for you." Our daughters, Julie and Kate, were juniors at the University of Connecticut. Julie was exactly 9 months older than her sister. Kate was allowed to skip 4th grade and ended up graduating from high school in the same class as her older sister. Julia followed in my footsteps and majored in electrical engineering. Kate majored in chemistry and planned a career in medicine. Earlier that day, I was able to reach Kate on her cell phone, telling her that I needed to speak with her and her sister later that afternoon, and asking that they not contact their mom until we, let's talk. "Dad!" What the hell is going on? Mom has called each of us a dozen times and must know that we are dodging her calls. I kissed Kate on the cheek, hugged Julie, and led them to a table in a quiet corner of the UC Student Union. "You look like crap, Dad," Julie said. For the first time in weeks, I laughed heartily as I realized those were exactly the words my boss had said earlier in the day. "Yes, you're not the first to notice this." It was Kate's turn, and she said, "Just tell us, Dad." "We worry. What's happening?" I rehearsed in my head how to answer this question, but was at a loss for words when it came time to speak. Instead, the sobs that I'd been holding in since I met with my private detective came out in a fountain of tears. Both girls jumped out of their chairs and ran into my arms. My girls held me tightly until I was able to get my very strong emotions under control. "Sorry that I have to tell you this, but I will file for divorce from my mother. She has a long, ongoing affair with a colleague." Julie began. "But Dad, you—" She couldn't finish her thought. "Yeah, baby, I'm sure. I have proof." Julie's jaw dropped, and Kate began to cry. Julie spoke next. "Dad, I want to see the evidence. I know you're not lying, but I need to see this. Earlier in the day, I took one photo that was horrifying, but one of the least offensive, and separated it from the rest of the private investigator's report. I pulled out a photo of their mom and Mike Brooks leaving the house their real estate firm was trying to sell. Michael and Amy stood on the porch and kissed. The girls looked at the photo together, and Julie began. "Dad." "Honey," I interrupted. "I have photos, videos, text messages, and emails. I will never show this to any of you, but I saw them. They are awful." At this moment, both girls were crying. Kate asked through tears, "Are you really going to divorce your mom?" "Girls, at the moment I don't see an alternative. I know I have never been a perfect husband or father." I shrugged off their protests and continued, "But I tried to do the right thing. Most of the time I was successful, but sometimes I was wrong. My mistakes were never intentional, and I always corrected them immediately. I have invested everything I have into my marriage and family. I have nothing more to give, and it seems like Mom needs more." The girls stopped crying and listened carefully to my words. "I still love your mother, although not as much as I did 6 weeks ago when I became suspicious. But I don't really like her. I certainly don't trust her, and I can't imagine ever being able to trust her again. The worst thing for me is that I have lost your mother's respect. She humiliated me in the worst ways possible, and she didn't care." The brief silence was broken by Julie's cell phone ringing. We looked at the phone screen and saw Mom. Looking at Julie, I said, "Don't—" Before I could say anything else, Julie grabbed her phone and angrily replied, "Sorry, Mom, but Kate and I don't have time for you. We console our grief-stricken father. If you need someone to talk to, too, just call your sex buddy." We could all hear Amy screaming hysterically as Julie hung up. When the phone rang again, Julie immediately turned it off and Katie followed suit. "I'm sorry you find yourself in the middle of this terrible mess. Your mom—" "Okay. She's still your mom. She loves you and you know it. I expect things to be rocky between you and Mom, at least for a while, but I also expect you to treat her with the respect she deserves." When the girls started protesting, I raised my hand. "I'm not asking you to accept her infidelity or the irreparable damage it has caused to our wonderful family, but we will all have to learn to live with it." I looked from one of my girls to the other and continued. "She is your mother, and you need to accept and love her, warts and all, just like you need to accept me, in the same way." After leaving the UC campus, I stopped at a burger joint for a bite and a well-deserved craft beer, then headed to my parents' house. I rarely visit my parents unannounced, and as I was sitting in their driveway gathering my thoughts, I saw their front door swing open. Dad went out onto the porch, and Mom followed on his heels. They watched me together while I sat in my car. I gathered my courage and got out of the car, and as I started to walk up the path in front of the house, Dad walked towards me. Dad and I met halfway, and he wrapped me in a big bear hug. The strength that I tried to muster left me, and I unashamedly burst into tears into my father's shoulder. Your mom and I don't know what's going on, but Amy's frantic phone calls alerted us to the fact that there was a problem. We expected you to show up this evening. After I told my parents about Amy's affair with her coworker, my mother asked, "Do you think counseling could help you deal with this problem?" My mother was always an optimist, and in truth, she considered Amy her daughter. Tears streamed down her cheeks as I shook my head and said, "I have no desire to see a psychologist. I'm not perfect, but I treated Amy and the girls like queens. I didn't do anything wrong, and I don't deserve the cruel, disgusting treatment that Amy showed me." "But you spent so many wonderful years together." Sighing, I admitted, "You're right, Mom. We had a wonderful life together until Amy, and only Amy, ruined this perfect life and family. This wasn't a one-night stand. It's a love affair between two selfish married people who don't care about anyone but themselves." I could tell the wheels in Mom's brain were turning madly as she tried to think of a different approach. I think I stunted my mother when I asked, "Why do you want me to be miserable living with a lying, cheating whore?" Like I said, I'm not perfect, but I hope we can all agree that I deserve better than to live with a cheating slut. "Please, Chris," my mother begged, "don't call Amy such dirty names, at least not in front of me." "I was trying to get my point across, Mom. Amy has happily accepted everything I can give, but it's not enough. She took much more and, in the process, humiliated and disrespected me. I'll ask again, don't I deserve better?" Dad interrupted her and said, "Give Mom a break. We are trying to make sense of what is still a shock. You know that your mom and I will support you in any decision you make." Dad waited a few seconds before continuing, "And you must understand if this is possible. We would like to continue our relationship with Amy and her family. It certainly won't be as strong as what we have now, but I pray Amy's activities don't stop that from happening." When Dad finished, Mom's cell phone rang. Mom looked at the screen and said, "This is Amy." After thinking for a second, Mom looked me in the eye and said, "I won't avoid Amy's calls, and I won't lie to her. I will never ask you for this." Dad and I sat in silence while Mom answered the call. "Hello, Amy. He arrived here 10 minutes ago and told us about your behavior. I suppose he'll stay here for the night." "Now! Now!" "Sorry, Chris. Amy is on her way." "Don't worry about it, Mom. I'm going to go. I'll call you in the morning." Mom asked, "Where are you going?" "Stacy has a family cottage on Lake Cooper. She allows me to use it for a short time." "Eventually, you'll have to talk to her," Dad said. "I'll talk, but I'm going to do it on my time, not hers. I'm just not ready." "What should we tell Amy when she arrives?" Mom wanted to know. "I would call her and tell her that she's going in vain. Tell her I'm not ready to talk to her. I know you won't lie, but I expect you not to tell her where I'm staying." Mom started crying. I walked around the table and hugged her tightly. Dad joined us, and the Harrington family consoled each other. My mom and Dad silently gave me all the emotional support I needed. After officially starting the divorce process with a visit to a highly recommended divorce lawyer, I headed to my mother-in-law's house. Amy's car wasn't in the driveway, so I parked and headed to the front door. "This is really bad, isn't it?" These were the first words of greeting when Frank Wilson opened the front door. It can't get any worse. Frank stood in the middle of the doorway, blocking my entrance, and asked, "Who cheated?" "She did it." "Do you have evidence?" Frank wanted to know. When I nodded, Frank yelled, "Damn!" and turned, leaving the door open, and went into the kitchen. Eileen, Amy's mother, sat restlessly at the kitchen table. When I entered, she raised her head and, pointing to the coffee maker on the counter, said, "The coffee is fresh." While I silently poured a cup, Frank pulled out a bottle of Jack from the kitchen cabinet. We sat down and Frank added a couple shots of bourbon to his coffee and slid the bottle across the table towards me. As I poured some courage into my cup, Frank asked, "Can I see the evidence?" Staring at the kitchen table, I told him, "I'll let you see the written report, but I won't show you any photographs or videos." I looked up when he swore again and, looking him in the eyes, continued, "But Frank, I beg you, don't ask to see the photographs. No father should ever see his daughter do what is shown in the photographs. It was sad to see, but Frank collapsed in front of Eileen and I. Eileen intervened and asked, "Is there any hope that your marriage will survive?" "I met with the lawyer earlier this morning. He will complete the paperwork early next week and file the papers in court on Wednesday. The lawyer has Amy's cell number and will call her. She will have the opportunity to pick up the documents at his office, or we can serve her officially." "I can't believe you're ruining your marriage with such disregard." Eileen had a flash of anger. "I'm not destroying anything, Eileen. It's Amy's fault. She left me." "But it was only once," Eileen screamed. I took 3 deep breaths to calm myself, and momentarily regretted the bourbon I'd put in my coffee. This happened more than once. This didn't happen twice. Only Amy and her kinky sex buddy know exactly how many times they've dated, but their romance has been going on for months. We were all silent for a few moments before I continued. "This is the second marriage for each of you. You both ended your first marriages due to infidelity." Frank quickly replied, "But our marriages were new. Yours has been going on for 25 years. Surely that must mean something. Love, trust, and respect. Frank."